Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media and What's Up Worldwide. And this is a continuation on the series about the Israeli. We have asked some of our pastors in the Kansas City local area to give their opinion and their feelings on that conflict. And today we have my spiritual advisor, Emanuel Cleaver III. When I have issues as of late, I call this pastor to discuss those issues. Emanuel, it's a pleasure having you on the show today. I'd like to dive right into it. Talk about what you know about the conflict, how the conflict you see in a moral perspective, as well as a practical perspective as it relates to both parties.
Yeah, well, you have, the conflict goes back, several decades. If you go do a quick history, you have what's called the Jewish diaspora, which happened in 70 AD. That's when the Romans really destroyed Jerusalem. And so you had Jews that dispersed, many and probably mostly to Europe, some in Africa. And during that time, from 70 AD to until 1948 or so, whenever Israel was reestablished, you had people living there. And so when the Israelis returned, you had people who were already there. And I think that's the source of a lot of the conflict. And both groups trying to carve out their own identity, their own land. And so there has been disagreement on who ought to have control of what. And so, as I said, it's been going on for decades. This new conflict sort of emerged out of the same thing, where Palestinians were supposed to be evicted out of land that they had for for some generations. And so I think that just led, of course, Hamas responded to that, and it led to the conflict that we saw, and I guess the peace that is going on and hopefully will remain as cooler heads, we hope, will prevail.
Let me say this. I take this from our country and our Native American population. When Europeans came here, I don't know what movie it was, but it's not original saying for me, but it was, what kind of idea is it owning the land? How can you own the land, Mother Earth? All right, so that made me think in a different direction of human nature and alpha males and controlling populations. And you know where I'm going with that, Rev, because all right. And so when you start talking about that conflict and Israel, they go and they say, and I'm not pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian. Let me make my audience aware of that. I'm saying from a logical standpoint. So there was somebody on that land before Israel, if they want to claim it. And so what I was saying about the humanitarian and the practicality of that situation, and from my perspective, as I said when I had Bishop Caldwell on, that I don't understand how they could treat these people the way they have treated them, given they have been persecuted throughout ancient history, and as late the last 100 years through the Nazis and all of that. How could they do this? And if you know the history of the conflict, that when the Europeans came back to Palestine, not Israel, to Palestine from the war, that they were terrorists. They were bombing the King David Hotel. They were doing all of this. And if you, I know a lot of this because I grew up in an all Jewish neighborhood in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. And I'm old enough to remember when the conflict really started, in the 60s. And my whole neighborhood, I'm not just talking about the was Jewish, the Bronx that I lived in, and all the money that they were making were going back to Israel. That's when they really were trying to establish the state as it is now. And we weren't as close, the United States wasn't as close to Israel as we have become over the last 50 years. So, given that said, from a practical standpoint, I felt that as all the atrocities throughout history took place with the Jewish population and the world watched on, that their leadership at this point says, we've got a toehold over here. We have a semi-claim, and we don't care what the world thinks, because we see what the world will do, and we got to do what's going to protect us. And as I said to Bishop Tony Caldwell, and you know how I feel about this, I said, I wish more Black people would think in the same terms as to what's best for Black people here in the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, given that said, I also said with the brutality that the police and the security forces are using on the Palestinians, I liken that to what's happening here in the U.S. And so I'd like for you to speak on that. Hopefully I've clarified what's going on here.
Well, I mean, I think if you're talking about, what's going on with the Palestinians and the military force in Israel and comparing that to the police here in the United States, I would say it's a little different in that you do have, bombings and brutality that comes from Hamas. And so it goes both ways.
I'm the cutoff king. I'm the cutoff king. That's what Israel says. They've been doing this before there was anything called Hamas. So when I look at the United States and our interests, and I'll be practical on that. I got to go with Israel on how they think. I'm a United States citizen, so I got to go with, I don't have to, but I know that, but I'm talking moral. That's why I have you ministers on what do you think this is? You can't tell me because I sent a rocket over to your place because you've taken my land and now you put an atom bomb on me and I'm wrong. That's what I'm talking about. I might have didn't make myself clear. When these forces and all of this forces used, then the victim becomes the problem. It's like George Floyd. You're killing us every day, and we the problem. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying right or wrong, because it's in the world we live in, from my perspective, it's almost Darwinian, survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I think, well, I'd say the difference is Black folk in this country aren't able to strike back like Hamas is able to strike back.
All right. I
We
like
we
that.
don't we don't have that force to strike back. I mean, our striking back is protest. Our striking back is voting. Um, but yeah, I mean, we do face brutality, and of course, that's been going on for since the slave patrols, which is what really gave birth to modern policing in this country. So, I mean, yeah, I know at times many people would wish we had the force to really fight back because we've been fighting back for I don't know how long, and we're still being killed. You know, we hear about the George Floyds and the Breonna Taylors, but there are so many others that never make the headlines. I mean, here in Kansas City, there are some that never make the headlines because there was nobody there with the camcorder or a phone to record it. Nobody was there so that the world could see it. And those officers, get off scot-free. And so, I know there are some who are angry. I guess many are angry, and I think we have to find a way. And I'm not saying violently. I'm not saying that at all. But we have to find a way for police to say, "Hey, let's call a ceasefire, and we need to work this out." I think we're in a period where we can demand that, hey, we need to put a ceasefire to all this, and we need to uh, rework some things. And I know many cities, they're talking about defund the police or restructure the police. And I'm not saying necessarily defund, but we do need. It is time for a revolution.
To look at their funding, I'm the cutoff king. You know that, Rev. To look at their funding, I don't think and just like I said, this Israeli conflict is taking. If you don't really understand the whole deal, uh, nobody's saying get rid of the police. From my perspective, they're saying, hey, y'all got too many funds, and some of these funds should be put in programs that will help you decrease crime
Mhm.
and help you do these things. Now, when I was talking to Bishop Caldwell on, because he brought that in, he brought that we vilify one another on the Israeli conflict and,
Mhm.
and just in general, so that we can do and treat people the way we want to treat them. And what popped in my mind is I said, Bishop, I'm a troll because I have the media company. I got to be on the internet trying to find out what the heck is happening because news is second by second. And so what pops up? They got Mayor Quentin Lucas with a mug shot, looked like uh, and I'm like, oh, so that fell right into that conversation about vilification
Yeah.
and so I looked and I thought it was an individual on Facebook that how people do that type of
Mhm.
stuff, and then it was being sponsored by an organization. And when I was telling the story, people think that I won't mention the organization. I say, man, I don't remember. I'm reporting some things. I'm not a journalist. Our business is not journalism. We're a media company. We make commercials and this and that. But I use it to promote my community. So if I knew the people, what makes you think I'm scared to say who it was? Most people are because they don't want to be targeted. But the issue is vilifying the mayor because he's taking a stance on this police thing. And my brother-in-law, Leon Harden, was on the crime commission, and my brother-in-law, Ronald Harden, is retired from the police department. And so, and excuse me, I know people say, Mr. Nuss, you crazy. And I'm a gangster posing as a businessman, and I have no reason to love the police. But you've got to understand what's going on. It's not all police. And who are the police? From my perspective, white supremacy in the military, the police. And so the way we have to deal with that is have a strong political connection to our politics, which will change the fabric of the laws and the things that are allowing these things to happen without consequence. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need political clout, but I think more than anything, we need economic power. Because we've had Black elected officials, we have Black elected officials, and we're still climbing up this hill. The one hill that we've not made it over is to really have the economic power. And once you have economic power, then we don't have to ask if we can come to the table. We set the table ourselves and ask and invite others to the table that we have. But until that day comes, we're always going to be scratching and asking and working and climbing. That is the biggest hurdle that Black folk will have to overcome. And according to all sorts of reports, the average white family's income or net worth and the Black family's net worth is generations apart right now. And until that changes, like I said, we'll have to continue to ask instead of make it happen.
All right. Let me say this in response to that. First thing you said when I talked that politics, you said we have political representation. That's a fallacy. We don't have no political representation. And I stated this 3 or 4 times on my conversations with you privately and publicly. Political representation, we be at the table. I go back to when your dad got in as mayor and when he was a council person, we had political representation. I said there was no meals served downtown, the county, the city, the state, the governor. Wasn't no things being done in Kansas City that we weren't benefiting economically. So if we had political representation, as I've said, and hopefully my audience is hearing this, then our political representation, everything is real easy, would say, we're not going to vote. We're asking our community to suffer some pain. The next election, we're not going to show up at all. And then that would make it clear that we decide who's going to do what from here on out. Because whatever, if the Klan win the election, we say, if you're going to give us what we want, we throwing our weight behind it. That's how it worked. I've seen it work. Can't nobody tell me it doesn't work. So we don't have political representation. Let's get that straight, because that's real simple. And the other thing is that until we are really willing to recognize that what you spelled out about ancient times with Israel, that Europeans have had control of the narrative really since the 10th, 9th century, where they rewrote history on all levels, and they have controlled every form of communications on this planet. And so they not only have programmed us to think the way we think, now the whole program is programmed to consumerism, and that we control you, we control what you say, because if you say the wrong thing on your job, in your church, or anywhere, that our managers and mid-level managers here, you won't have a job. And not having a job today, any kind of job, is a death sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anyone can stop everyone from saying what they have to say.
No, not everyone.
It depends on where you get your funding from. That goes back to my point of economic empowerment. If I have economic power, then I'm not worried about if you don't like what I say.
You never have economic power if you cannot be in an atmosphere where you can create that. I have the only Black-owned digital media in the Midwest. And I've pointed out to you, look here in Kansas City, not one Black organization uses us or supports us financially. So those words are nice, but as I said, I live in reality where our mindset is. And again, don't nobody want to talk about the mindset. I'm with you. All of our problems in our community stem from economics, all of them. And when you have a community that is a nonprofit base, everything in our community is nonprofit. So that means you have your hand out. So you cannot talk about participating in American capitalism when every decision that you make is based on who's feeding you. And that's where our community is. So those are separate issues that I think we can talk about on some other things. But I debate anybody in this country on what's wrong in our community. Real simple, sellout. And it's not even a sellout. It is, I used to get angry, Pastor. It's more survival.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, and I think when we have that that honest conversation, then we can start to try to figure out how we deal with our situation. But I'm more like, you have to be the spook who sat by the door. And that's what I didn't understand about not the support of our company. I don't need no support. I got $5 million in my damn bank account. But how don't you support the people that are out front on you? And our media company is very important to any intellectual that understand that you cannot have support in your community if somebody else is delivering the message to your community. Because, all right, so I've taken most of the program over, but I think how I broke this down is very important for our laypersons to understand some things. And again, we are handcuffed until we can get where we are not dependent on grants and other people to conduct our business. We have to be like, if we want to be in movies, we got to be like Tyler Perry. We got to go buy our own studio, use our own people. But the key is we got to work together. Where I'm Denzel Washington coming to his studio, I might charge the other studio $5 million. I'm doing you $400,000. We don't understand that concept.
Yeah, no, I agree. As long as we're asking, like you said, with the nonprofits, as long as somebody else is feeding us, we won't have the power. Now that I am in complete agreement with, that we have to create, we have to build. I mean, that was what scared so many people with Black Wall Street. I mean, these were Black business people that didn't have to ask; they already had. And we have yet to recreate anything like Black Wall Street. But we saw what happened. It was, people feared it. These Black people have power, they have influence, they don't need anything. And so, it's burned down. But we do have to get back. And you think about
Cut off King, tell them the other part. Not only that it was burned down, what would a Black person say about it?
You said, what did a Black person say?
What could a Black person say if he wanted to live after they burn it down? Tell the audience that.
Yeah, no, they couldn't say anything. Many of the survivors didn't say anything because they feared, and the others, many of the white citizens acted like it never happened. And there's so many people who, more and more people are starting to talk about it today, but there were a lot of people who never even heard of it.
That lived in Tulsa. I seen the special. The kid said, hey, I'm born and raised here. I never heard of none of this. What was I speaking of before? The importance of media, having your own media. And so you can't tell me, and I call out names, NAACP, Urban League, Freedom, and all these different organizations, and you don't support your Black digital station? That says a lot. And then to me, would be leadership not pushing that point. You cannot bring, I have nothing against the Call, the Globe, or any newspaper. How you delivering the newspaper? You publish every 2 weeks, you publish every week. That's what the Black people get. That's what you support? Us getting everything a week behind? And then want to kill Mr. Nelson's radical, or Mr. Nelson's something's wrong with him. I think I'm the only one flew the cuckoo's nest, the only one thinking right and willing to express it.
Yeah.
I'll let you go. And I know I took this program over to a degree, but I think it's, I let off the program that you my spiritual advisor, and I think I don't play with that. And so the Spirit just had me, I had planned the Spirit said, hey, you need to lay some of this out. And I appreciate you all the time.
Yeah, no, thank you. Sharing what you feel and believe is important. So
hey, audience, and that's what, let me tell you this. I don't have no secrets. That's what Pastor always tells me. When I be telling him some difficult stuff, and I be saying, using the word, the Spirit, or what have you, Pastor always say, if the Spirit is telling you that, Nelson, you do what you think the Spirit is telling you. He don't give me no advice like, hey, do this, or all that political crap. From a spiritual point of view, Rev always say, Nelson, if the Spirit, he might not even be agreeing with me. That's the point I'm trying to make to you, audience. But he will say, do what the Spirit is telling you to do.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing words for our audience?
Just we have to keep moving forward. I think communication, getting the word out, and informing people, I think is where we are right now, because there's so much false news out there. We need the truth, and we need to hear it from our perspective. And hearing it from our perspective will make the world a different world. So I think we have to educate ourselves and gather all the information we can. And from there, I think we can move in the right direction.
Hey, Pastor, as we always say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This program is brought to you by Black Star.